While Biden turned his sights on reforming the country's top court, Trump and Harris are focused on each other as they traded jabs over the weekend.
We have a new victim now, Kamala. We have a new victim. We have a brand new victim. And honestly, she's a radical left lunatic. Kamala Harris presidency means 4 more years of extremism, weakness, failure, chaos, and probably World War III.
Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
The rhetoric between the parties is heating up with just under 100 days till the November 5th election. There's lots to break down with Tom Nichols, a staff writer at The Atlantic, and he joins me now. Hello, Tom, and welcome to Power and Politics.
Good to be with you.
So, as I said, there are less than 100 days to go. The Harris campaign reported yesterday that they have raised over $200 million in the week since they launched the campaign, so a significant effort there. What do the Democrats need to do now?
Well, they're doing what the thing they needed to do when President Biden stepped down, which was to coalesce around a candidate with a minimum of infighting. And truly, it's actually been kind of remarkable because the Democrats are not known for party discipline. And they seem to have done that quite well. They've also raked in quite a bit of money. But they're going to have to now take the fight to Donald Trump, which was, I think, one of the reasons President Biden stepped down. He just wasn't going to conduct that kind of campaign. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it seems like the Harris campaign is pretty determined to go after Trump in a way that Trump hasn't seen in a while. And I think it's kind of wrong-footed him right now. And you can tell that from the kind of rhetoric he's now deploying.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But as you say, the Democrats are starting to coalesce in a show of unity around Kamala Harris. And as we've seen in a week, a lot can change. They still have, as I said earlier, almost 100 days to go. They've got some momentum now. Do you think they can maintain that momentum? And if so, how?
Well, it's going to be difficult just because, the first week is always going to have this kind of excitement. But it really is to Harris's advantage that the campaign now is so short. The United States, we have these long, grueling campaigns that kind of wear everybody out. And I think it'll actually work to Harris's advantage that she's coming in with only 100 days ahead. What the Democrats, I think, need to do is to redefine Donald Trump the way that they're trying to do now, which is that he's not a normal candidate. This isn't a normal election, and that people shouldn't be comfortable with him, because I think that was a message that was getting lost with President Biden's message about democracy, that people can't really see democracy being threatened, even though it is, but they can see candidates being, as Vice President Harris keeps saying, they can see them being weird. And I think that is an effort that's actually going to pay off, I think, over the next few months for the Democrats.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. As you said earlier, the Trump campaign seems a little bit unsure of what line of attack to take. In the meantime, the Harris campaign has started describing the Trump campaign as quote-unquote weird and describing the Trump ticket as weird. Perhaps a pitch to younger voters there who are steeped in the social media of the day. What do you make of that messaging?
I don't think it's a pitch to younger voters. I think it's a pitch to normal voters. The Trump campaign is very weird. They have said some very strange things. And I've written about this over the past few months, that Trump has almost numbed people, numbed the media here, numbed voters to the kinds of things he says. And I think what the Harris people are trying to do is to remind voters that, it's not normal to talk about in the middle of a political rally about whether you'd rather be eaten by a shark or electrocuted. That it's not normal to talk about fictional serial killers, that this is just not normal stuff. And I think Trump managed to kind of get people used to it in a way that I think was unhealthy. And so I think that's why they're making this play to remind people that if you sort of step back and actually pay attention, that this is a very, very strange person. And Vance has had some things in his past, things that he said that are kind of weird as well. And the past week, the Democrats have made a lot of hay out of his comments about how childless cat ladies are a threat to the American Republic, which is, was a strange thing to say, and he keeps doubling down on it. And it is kind of odd. And I think that pointing that out is probably to the advantage of the Democratic campaign.
Well, I'm intrigued, Tom, by this numbing effect that you mentioned, which can sort of explain this pivot to a different style of messaging. I wonder, is there a risk in sort of underplaying or downplaying some of the other things Trump has done, which, as you say, they've sort of failed to land almost?
Yeah, the Trump became like everybody's kind of crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving table, where he just starts spooling off and ranting, and everybody says, well, that's Uncle Don, that's how he is. But I think what the Democrats are trying to do is remind people that this guy will have the codes to the strategic nuclear arsenal of the United States, that he's not running to be your eccentric uncle. He's running to be the commander in chief of the most powerful military in the world. And so I think that actually is something that has been left aside for too long. I think he was damaged by the felonies, and I think that's going to be the next line of attack. That as Vice President Harris leans into this, you're going to hear more about her being a prosecutor, him being a felon, which he really doesn't like. And I think what you're going to see is the Democrats, as part of this campaign, are just going to try and get under his skin, because that's when he starts making a lot of mistakes and he starts saying things that people start paying attention to. So I think that's probably what's coming next.
Well, we've seen some of that dynamic already a little bit. I want to switch gears slightly. Discussions continue about who Harris will pick to be her VP running mate. On the Trump campaign, you previously described his pick, J.D. Vance, as one who is, quote unquote, probably seemed safe. Does he still seem like the safe pick now? And who do you see the Harris campaign picking?
Well, Vance is absolutely not the safe pick now. When I said safe, he's the kind of pick you make when you think you're winning, when you think you're already across the finish line, and you can pick somebody who's just a kind of a red meat gift to your most faithful base voters. If Trump had been thinking about this during a tighter race, I can't imagine that he would have picked Vance. Although Vance, and before we say anything more about Vice President Harris's picks, Vance was an important pick because Vance really won the sweepstakes of saying, I will do whatever you tell me to do. I will back up and betray all the things that I once believed in, if that's what you want. And that's very important to Trump. For Harris, if we learned anything in the past 3 weeks, it's not to think things are predictable. But Harris has some interesting choices. She has a pretty good bench to pick from. Two governors who are well liked. That is Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Waltz of Minnesota, Beshear of Kentucky, who might be in the next kind of circle of contenders. She's got a popular senator from Arizona, a state that she needs, but who's also a good contrast with J.D. Vance, Senator Mark Kelly. Kelly's a military guy, career military, an astronaut. His wife suffered, Gabby Gifford suffered terribly from an incident of political violence. So he has a very compelling story to bring to it. Who she would pick out of those? Hard to say. Waltz has a lot of populist cred. Shapiro comes from a must-win state. Kelly brings military experience and a kind of, the anti-Vance kind of presence from Arizona. So she's actually got a lot of good picks that she can make. It's hard to imagine any of those, including Beshear and a few others, really being a mistake.
All right, I've got time for one final question. I want to ask you about the news of the day. These are Biden's proposed reforms for the U.S. Supreme Court. Some interesting timing there. What political purpose could it serve for Biden to release this proposal now?
Well, I think aside from a political purpose, I think he believes in it. I think it's something he thinks has to be done before that he wants to put on the table before he leaves office. I'm skeptical of constitutional amendments. We don't do that very often in the United States. I'm skeptical of structural fixes to moral problems, because I think the problem with the Supreme Court is a moral and ethical problem, as your reporter noted earlier. But I think the political purpose is to remind people that presidents get to pick Supreme Court justices, and that if Trump wins, it could very likely be that the 6-3 conservative majority that effectively has declared him to be a king at this point will become a 7-2 majority. And God forbid that anything happens to anybody else. So, with 4 years to pick another justice, I think what Biden's doing is saying, think about this and think about the long-term effects, because the 6-3 majority has already done things that, in my view, are unthinkable for Supreme Court justices at this point.
All right, we have to leave it there. Tom Nichols, staff writer at The Atlantic. Thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you.